So, but then as it shifted into the Olympian pantheon, we're chopping off the mother.
Yes.
There is no mother, just
Yeah.
complete non-existent. Like, this is interesting because originally it's all mother, and then it becomes, well, whatever. This is a male attribute now. Wisdom and strategy. We're just going to absorb that into the male concept.
Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, J.N. Behringer, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kaylee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Feminine Alchemy. I'm J.N. Behringer, and of course we always have the lovely Julie Dean Richards and Kaylee Rose here with us today. Say hi, ladies.
Hello.
This is the first of a wonderful series on the asteroid goddesses, and today we are talking about Pallas Athena, which, yes, it is Athena, and there's so much more to that, and I love how nuanced we're getting because I think we find a lot of wisdom in the nuance. So I'm excited. We didn't even talk about a get to know you question. So what should we banter about first before we get into it, guys?
Well, she's about strategy and also about the art. So we could talk about something strategic or artistic that we like to do.
I love that idea. Would you like to go first? I have no idea what this is. I have no idea what I'm going to say. And I'm going to listen to you, but I'm also going to think about what I'm going to say.
I didn't actually have anything planned for myself. I will say that I have always been in love with the idea of chess and like being good at chess. And my brother is quite good at chess. He is a manifesting generator. He picks up all these talents. And one time he blindfolded himself and he still beat me at chess. That's how good he is at chess. Yeah. He is incredibly smart. He like read all the books and did all the things. And I like to fantasize that I am good at chess and that I am logical and strategic enough, because one time in 5th grade, I played against this group of boys, just me against the boys. This actually is perfect for Pallas. Me against the boys, and I ended up winning, and I was so proud of myself that I won this chess battle. But since then, I do not win chess very much. And when my husband and I got engaged that night, we played chess and I got really mad at him for beating me. So there's your strategy, always wanting to be good at this. But I don't know if I'm kind of mediocre at it probably, but I just like the idea of being very strategic and logical. And like, you watch the movie Bobby Fischer, like we're searching for Bobby Fischer, and like the kid who's in it, he like sees 12 steps ahead. He can see the chess 12 steps ahead and he always wins. And I was like, I want to be like him. I'm going to be like that with my strategy. So there you go. That's my I'm ungood, mediocre strategy thing.
I love that you just shared that story. That's too funny. I have never wanted to be good at chess. I've never cared one bit. But I love that you're like, I want to be good at chess. But I relate to what you said as far as the like being strategic and logical. Like I remember growing up, and especially in high school, even into college, it was like there were two versions of me. There was like this very logical, highly intelligent, very analytical version of Kaylee that was just good at all the things. And then there was this version of Kaylee that was like super creative and super like just super right brain and also good at all the things. Not really, but it felt like it at the time. And it was like I always had to choose between like, okay, am I going to show up as this version now or am I going to show up as this version now? And I didn't realize until I was an adult, like that I actually blended the two more often than I thought. But it was me thinking that I had to prove to everyone around me that I was good enough and that I had to achieve and that I was doing it for love and approval that made me see, like, that made me fragment myself, that made me not recognize that, like, hey, I'm all of that. I am all of it together. And this is like super fitting for Pallas too, because it's all connected to everything that we're going to talk about with Pallas. But I actually, like, I went to college to study genetics, and I left college with a degree in art. And so, like, even now, like, I love to create things, absolutely love it in whatever medium I possibly can, including in the flesh. Part of why I have so many children. I just love creating things. And yeah, that's my little blurb that kind of goes along with our question.
That's really beautiful. I love creating things, even in the flesh.
And I love that you said you're good at things. It's okay to say I was good at all the things. It's very appropriate. You're allowed to
Good at
say
all the
that.
things except like sports.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. You're allowed to not be good at one thing. You are allowed that,
Okay,
reprieve.
that's good.
Priorities. Yes. What do I do? I don't know. I'm really into strategy, but I'm not the think 10 steps ahead strategist. I'm more of the how do we accommodate all the things at the same time using systems strategist. So that way we can be in the current present and like have everything we need when we need it. Which I always assume is really weird. I always assumed the world just naturally works this way, but I was left out of that. And and then I had to recreate it. But what I'm realizing is that it does not have systems in place. So, and most people are just like making things happen day to day and then taking their brain power to go back and say, yeah, I strategized that. This is the thing that and it's so funny. I see it all the time with people where they go, now, other people really know what they're doing. And I'm like, no, they don't. No, they don't. That's the big lie, guys. No one knows what they're
Everybody's
doing.
clueless.
We're all flying by the seat of our pants. And we get to be adults because we've achieved a certain age that said we're allowed, our seat of our pants matters. That's it.
Very true. So true.
So I just like to create systems that make that more easeful when we need to do something. We have the things in the right place at the right time. And I get really irritated when other people don't follow my rules because I'm right.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are, Jan. You are right.
Thank
Always.
you. I'm always
Yes.
right. Everything
Always
I do.
the best systems for all the things.
So let's jump into Pallas. I think that the best place to start is to just talk about some of her myths. So it gives people a frame of reference, right? Sort of like why we ask people, what's your cultural background? Like, what's Pallas's cultural background? How did she grow up? Where did she come from? And because all of those stories, like we talk about with the fairy tale episode, all these stories are built into the collective unconscious, and having her name named by astronomers, right? Having that name up in the sky as like a named item, we're bringing that story to the forefront and saying, this is important. This is something that is a reference point for the collective unconscious. So all of these stories have that little extra bit of juice because she's got a named body. So what are some stories that we need to know about Pallas Athena?
Well, I think real quick before we do that, just to remind people, I mean, obviously the series is named this, but we're talking about Pallas Athena as an asteroid and one of the goddess asteroids. Just to give some of her astronomical background a little bit, Pallas was discovered in 1802. And she is the third largest asteroid in the asteroid belt. And we'll come back to this later, but she is located in between Mars and Jupiter, which is like very fitting for Pallas. But yeah, just to give that as the astronomical background, that's who we're looking at. You can see her in your chart. Usually, if you have it pulled up even at like astro-charts.com, like your free chart. But of course, if you look at something more advanced, like, I mean, I guess astro.com has her as well, which is also free. But if you have like Astro Gold or things like that, she'll usually be just automatically pulled up for you. But what she looks like is she's got a little cross on the bottom, and then the top of her is a diamond. So she's the diamond with the cross on the bottom. So that's who we're talking about today. Let's talk about some of her myths, because I have not a complaint, but it is interesting to me that we call her Pallas Athena, because there are some myths that are solely about Pallas and Athena like interacting with each other as two different people, which is really fascinating. And maybe we can chat about that. But first, I think it'd be great, Kaylee, if you gave just some background about her in general, about Athena in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the versions of Athena's myths that most of us are probably aware of are her Olympian myths, where she's part of the Olympian pantheon. And in those myths, she's very, okay, let's start at the quote unquote beginning, because it's not truly the beginning for Athena, but it's the beginning of Olympian Athena. And so she was born from the head of Zeus. He actually swallowed her mother. At one point, and she was born from his head. He got a horrible headache, and different myths say it was a different god who helped like crack his skull open so she could get out. She sprang from his head fully adult, fully armored, and ready to go. And we'll talk more about this later probably, but that's just super fascinating that she comes into existence in these myths already accomplished, already like fully adult and powerful. And she was kind of this champion of heroes. She helped a lot of heroes accomplish a lot of things, especially those heroes who were cunning and intelligent, because she was seen as the goddess of strategic warfare versus like Mars, just let's fight and do the stuff. She was much more strategic, much more focused on like winning, but also maybe being able to negotiate instead of just tear people apart. In her earlier myths, her pre-Hellenic myths, her pre-Olympian myths, she was much more connected with the arts and crafts. She was credited with teaching women how to weave and credited with teaching women how to make pottery. She was known as the protector of the home. She was associated with snakes, and snakes were considered the protector of the home. And even in Olympian myths, she was connected with like woodworkers and weavers and all the handicrafts. So that continued past her absorption into the Olympian pantheon. But one thing that kind of died to a certain extent when she was absorbed into the Olympian pantheon was her connection to the earth and her being an earth goddess. She was a facet of the mother goddess before she was ever the goddess of war. And even though the myth has shifted over time, I do think it's important to remember how she began. And she did begin as an earth goddess and connected to fertility and connected to the earth and to the cycles of life. Is there anything either of you wanted to add to that?
I was just sitting back and enjoying the stories. Like, honestly, that was great. That was so good. What do you think about, did she have a different origin story before the Olympian myths? It was just she was a flavor of the mother goddess,
Basically,
or
that she was a facet of the
yeah.
mother goddess. There may be more to her origin story that I just haven't come across or I'm not remembering right now, but it was primarily just like facet of the mother goddess.
So, but then as it shifted into the Olympian pantheon, we're chopping off the mother.
Yes.
There is no mother, just complete non-existent. Like, this is interesting because originally it's all mother, and then it becomes, well, whatever. This is a male attribute now.
Mhm.
Wisdom and strategy. We're just going to absorb that into the male concept, which is, just really interesting to me.
Yeah, I wanted to say it's very interesting to me that she is an earth goddess, because when we think about the element of earth, like think about molding clay in your hands. There is both this idea of like that arts, that crafting, and the idea of strategy as well. When we talk about the earth, we're talking about being practical and being able to create something and structures, and earth is often associated with that, with the arts, being artistic, especially when we look at like its connection to Venus and Taurus and all those pieces. And so I think it's so fascinating that she kind of lost a little bit of that was her thing, like the earth is part of who she was and that crafting, and then it gets changed. And even like weaving to me is such an earthy thing. Not that it's not watery as well, but it has this like, I'm bringing something into physical being right now, which is like a very earthy piece of her. So I think that's very fascinating to look at that as well.
So until Kaylee's resonant astrology concept, she's always been associated with Virgo, right? And what I think is really interesting for what you just said, Julie, is when you're weaving, when you're crystallizing things, you're pulling that, to me, is a Pisces to Virgo concept. Like, we're just taking from the ether and we're bringing it into form and crystallizing into form. Like, that is, to me, classical. That axis. Where is she in resonant astrology, Kaylee?
So she doesn't actually hold a rulership position in resonant astrology. She is important. And like, as I continue my research, this idea that she is kind of this initiator to taking the heroine's journey has come up. And so as I'm continuing to develop this, I have a feeling like that's going to keep popping up, because like as I'm doing this research, yeah, there's a lot of actual like knows in books, like really old books and on the internet scouring things, but there's also this element of intuition that comes in, and the intuitive part is always spot on. Like I always find what the evidence in the literature after that intuitive hit. So I think it's safe to say that Pallas is often involved in that initiation into taking the heroine's journey.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Go ahead, Julie.
I just have one thing to say about that Pisces Virgo aspect, and how interesting it is just to bring this up, because when Pallas and Athena are talked about separately, Pallas is talked about as the daughter of Neptune. And so, like, she's Neptune's daughter. And she also, who in modern astrology rules Pisces, right? So, that watery piece. And there are myths that Pallas and Athena fight each other. They do like a battle with each other, and Athena kills Pallas on accident in this battle. And that's like part of the reason she's like, I'm not going to be the person like Mars who's just like, kill everything, like everything you see, like just shoot it. I will actually become incredibly strategic because I just can't let this happen. So I think it's interesting that like they, in this concept, right, Pallas and Athena are stuck together as those two sides of the watery, like the Pallas being like that watery Neptune's daughter, and Athena being the other side of the arts and the Virgo and the weaving piece and the earthy piece, you know, coming back into play with how she is, which I think really shows her brand of strategy. Her brand of strategy is not just like the logical strategy that you think of when you think about, you know, let's planning out this war, doing this, or chess or whatever. It's like, it's the kind of strategy that allows you to pull from the ether, like Jayan said, and bring to the physical reality, which is part of the reason I think she makes such a good initiator into the heroine's journey, because she allows you to go into the ether so that you can pull out the new you into a reality. But I would love to hear Kaylee talk about more about how she fits into the heroine's journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you brought up that Pallas element, because it is so fascinating how that more Neptunian, watery, how that's a part of Pallas, how that's a part of Athena, how that's a part of the astrology and the psychology of it. Because Pallas, as she relates to the heroine's journey, so many women from a young age in our current culture are conditioned to let go of a lot of their femininity, a lot of their feminine essence, and to just seek for approval and accolades and achievement. And I have to prove, I have to prove, I have to prove, I have to prove, which is incredibly masculine. And we burn ourselves out in the process, usually. And Pallas in astrology, in so many ways, is connected to that. Like, let's achieve, let's win this war, literally or figuratively. Let's do all the things, let's be good at all the things. But then there's always this reckoning, because we are in female bodies with female biology that has certain hormonal cycles that we cannot deny, that when we try to deny them, we start developing all kinds of problems. And so with Athena's mythology, this idea of like, we're cut off from the mother, we're cut off from the feminine. That's how so many women live for much of their lives before they get this call to the heroine's journey, this call to like, wait a minute, this is not working. This does not make sense. So now I have to go within myself and go find that Pallas within Athena. Go find that original Athena within Athena, that Athena that's pre-Olympian, that is connected to the earth, that is connected to the mother, that is connected to all these feminine traits. And like, even looking at my own placement of Pallas, the asteroid, in my own chart, I see this pattern of like, okay, yeah, that's an area where I denied my femininity over and over and over and over. And that's an area where I was called to go within and start this process of reclaiming the feminine. I think it's so beautiful to witness in my own life, but to watch in other people's lives how Pallas can mirror her mythology of like, okay, we were connected to the feminine and now we're disconnected from the feminine. But now guess what? We get to heal and we get to become more whole.
Yeah. I just want to underscore everything Kaylee's saying, because like all of this stuff that she's saying is the basis of why we're even doing this podcast. And she's creating a distinction between the movement known as feminism, which was important, and the thing that we're trying to talk about, which is femininity itself. So feminism is one thing, femininity is another thing. It's totally different. But everything is about empowering women, right? There's that same thread, that same throughput. But do we have to do it by being, quote, as good as a man? No, we are something else. We are also something else. We are good enough already. We don't have to prove it. And that's exactly what this myth is about. That's exactly why it's the entrance to this heroine's journey. This is so good. So important. So important. If you could say it twice, I would have you say it twice.
I love that. Yes, I completely agree with Jan and Kaylee. And how interesting that, again, like even with the feminism movement, we did stake so much on that. We did do the beginning thing that Pallas Athena tends to do, which is like, oh, I come out of the head of my father, so therefore I have to be like the daddy's girl, meaning like I have to be, like Jan said, just as good as a man. I have to prove that I'm just as good as a man. I have to prove that I am like Zeus. And that was for a long time what we fought for. Not that we weren't fighting for essential rights, right? Like there's something about fighting for essential rights and, of course, being able to vote and being able to speak for ourselves, of course. But there also is this flare that comes up, and the way that we have been fighting for it is still like, hey, look at me, dad. Like, look, I am just as good as a man. And like, even I'm better than a man, right? Like, oh, we've been better all along, and we need to show that we're better, instead of let's empower ourselves, like Jan said, to be a woman. You are good enough just as a woman, like just as yourself. But the thing is, just like Pallas Athena has lost so many connections to the mother, we've like forgotten what that even means. We're like, what is, because we've demonized the power in womanhood, we've demonized all things feminine. We're like, those things are terrible and weak and awful. And like, we've done it even so much so that like all the symbols associated with it, all the words associated with feminine things, we've talked about this before, but like the very fact that the word crone or hag is evil, right? Like we've talked about the word witch and how all of those originally were the crowned one, the holy one, right? The wise one. And now it's like they're evil, evil, evil things. We can even look into the word whore. The word whore originally meant womb, the woman of the womb. And now what does the word whore mean? What do we look at it? We've taken all of these things that are innately feminine words, and it just shows how much we have degraded ourselves, right? Like we ourselves, because we've been trying to be daddy's girls, have demoted everything that has to do with the feminine, which is why I think this is why Pallas Athena is such a good entry point into, femininity is not what you think it is. We got to go down the rabbit hole.
Absolutely. Let's talk about, you touched on some symbols already, Julie. Let's talk about the symbols of Pallas Athena. And then later on, we'll get into what does she mean in your chart? But this is all of the context that you've got to have going into any kind of reading. Because if you don't have the context, then you're going to be very one-dimensional in how you interpret your chart. we have to go into all this context. Let's talk about symbols. Owls, snakes, what else is there? I forget.
She also has, I think it's more of a modern symbol, but I would say the loom is associated with her, of course, because weaving in the loom. But like ones that came after she was an Olympian is like the arrow and the shield is part of her deal. Olive
Yes.
trees. That's her other big symbol. So the owl, the shield, and the spear, the serpent, and olive trees are her big symbols. I want Kaylee to talk about owls because she loves them so much. Talk about the owls, Kaylee.
I do love owls. Actually, there's been like 3 or 4 generations of women in my family who've been like mildly obsessed with owls. Um, so it's hereditary. But owls, like if you think about what an owl actually is and how it actually functions out in the wild, you get a lot of the symbolism there. Like they're nocturnal for the most part. They're out at night. They're out when things are maybe a little unclear, and yet they can see so very clearly and they can hear so well. And there's a silence to them as well, that and a stillness that makes it so that they can, well, catch prey in a way that a lot of other animals maybe can't. But when it comes to like their symbolism, there's been a lot of vilification, a lot of association with death and with evil, but really they're just connected to the unknown. They're connected to that feminine aspect of like, hey, it hasn't formed yet, so we don't quite know what it is, but it's coming. It is forming. There's a certain lack of certainty that's connected to the feminine and with owls, because you go outside, you hear an owl, chances are you're not going to know where it is. You're not going to find it. You're not going to see it. You're just going to know it's there. And if you happen to be a mouse, that's terrifying. If you happen to be a human, that's only terrifying if you made up a story about what it means. And with Athena, her connections to wisdom and even the little bit of ambiguity that's a part of her because she has morphed so much, like it makes so much sense to me that she would be connected with owls. And this idea of like, it's neither here nor there. Like, where is it? And then there's kind of this strategy as well with owls where like they are very precise. They do what they're going to do and pinpoint their prey and they get it. And they yeah, there's just something very peaceful and very regal but also very raw about owls, and I think that makes a lot of sense for Pallas. A lot of sense for Pallas Athena.
Yeah, can I say something about that? About
Yeah,
owls? Because you
absolutely.
brought up. So I was thinking about this and the idea of like the calculating woman. She's so calculating, right? Like she is this, and how we kind of look at the woman who is able to be strategic as like, "Oh, she's so calculating and she's evil because like she gets what she wants." Like we always view it as like manipulative rather than understanding that strategy, right? It just like the owl is a feminine trait. It's part of the feminine. We have rejected it so much. I have to be innocent. I have to be the innocent little girl and I have to be naive. I cannot be calculating. Calculating is not feminine. But the owl shows us different because not only is the owl wise because the owl has lived a long time and because the owl can see very far into the darkness, but the owl is wise because the owl is calculating. It makes strategic moves. It dives for what it wants. And so I think this can give permission in that like strategy, like Jan was hinting at earlier, strategy is not just a masculine thing. It is a very feminine thing. And think about that. Like if you're going to bring something to life, if you're going to be creative, you have to have some kind of strategy. I mean, obviously your intuition can be your strategy. Like you can just do things intuitively, but there's foresight. And I love the owl because the eyes, I feel like the feminine gives us sight. It gives you sight in the darkness. It gives you foresight to see ahead and to know. That's why so many women have these gifts that we call it all the time. Mother's intuition. Oh, she just knows. Like mother just knows somehow, and women just know something's coming. But how many women have this gift of foresight and being able to understand and see things before they come, which is why so many women are drawn to like those things like astrology that helps you see forward and tarot that helps you see forward, and how those have also been demonized. But I love the owl for all these reasons and everything Kaylee said too.
So good. So good. I don't think we talked about owls at all ever so far. So it's just like such a great conversation about the owl. What else are his symbols? And we can, I mean, we've talked a lot about snakes. We talked about the loom, I'm sure people can imagine, but let's go into a little bit of detail so that way we're refreshing. What about snakes?
Yeah, I can go pretty quick through serpents. Kaylee, everyone's welcome to add anything that they want to, but I love what Kaylee said about serpents being protectors of the home. Love that. Cats play that role also, right? Like they kind of do that as well. But the serpent, we often see, Kaylee knows the name of the symbol and I can't remember, but the snake eating its tail, what's that called, Kaylee? Do you remember?
Ouroboros.
Okay, the Boroboros. That symbol has been around for thousands of years, and it's this symbol that snakes have of eternity, ever going, ever coming. The snake is shedding its skin, right? So it's always becoming new, it's always starting again, death and rebirth. That's all the snake, that's all the feminine. Serpents also, though, as related to Athena as protectors, I think are very key when it comes to her, as well as the serpent is another animal that we might call like crafty, calculating, similar to the owl. And that's why we get scared of serpents. We call somebody a snake. Oh, he's such a snake, right? Because, snake oil, they sold me something that wasn't good or whatever. But again, it's hearkening to this, like, women are allowed to be smart. Like, part of women is like, it's okay to think forward. And I think that's so part of, I just want to draw attention to this because our bodies are biologically different than men, women have to be crafty. You have to be able to think because it's part of your survival. Man and the masculine can use their brute strength to get through things, and their energy lasts a lot longer because of the way their blood flows. Like, this is all biological. Women don't have that, especially when you're carrying a baby, like when you are pregnant and you can't run very fast. You have to be crafty. You have to be calculating. And so I think the serpent does that really well, shows this, that like it strikes when it needs to. It is smart. Snakes mostly stay out of people's way. They don't come to attack you. You have to try real hard to get a snake to attack you. And no one talks about that. But the women are the same way, right? We move around things. We maneuver through things. We learn how to do that. Sorry, that was a lot more about the serpent. And I was going to say, does anyone want to add to that?
So good. No, that makes so much sense too. The other thing I want to say about this sort of snake, but it's not really a snake, is if you notice in my mind's eye, if you could see what I see, that's where I'm going to start. I see Athena as like this, yes, a little bit masculinized, but just very strong, very broad type of person, right? Who is a warrior, intelligent warrior. And I think it also speaks to this concept of like, there's a lot of rhetoric out there as, oh, you have to be less, be smaller, shrink your energy. Like, she is in full embodiment of her energy, and there's a lot of muscles there, right? Like, if you're, again, when people go work out, I don't want to get too many muscles. Muscles are good. They grow the bones, they keep you strong, and you can maneuver a lot better like that snake when you have good range of motion and strong muscles and good stability. All of that comes into play. So it's this full embodiment of being okay to be completely in your power physically and intellectually. But that's my tangent on your fun tangent.
I love it. No, I love that. And like, snakes are all muscle, right? Like, that's what they are. And that's how they can move so well. And I think that goes to Athena's ability to like work on her craft and like to be wise and to, and how we as women, we can work at it. And I totally second the muscle thing. If you don't have muscle, please get the muscle. You will live longer if you have lots of muscle on your body, regardless of anything else. But yes, I love that. Sorry, Kaylee, do you want to say something before we move on to like the shield and spear or the olive trees?
No, I'm loving everything that you guys have said and have nothing to add right now.
Okay, perfect. So let's talk about shield and spear. I have dual feelings about these symbols. These symbols to me, and you guys can correct me, seem like symbols that were added to her after she became an Olympian rather than her original self. Because the spear and the arrow are usually masculine symbols. And that's not that women can't have shields and spears and they can't fight. Like, that's not what I'm saying. And the shield as the protectress is very fitting. but it does feel like this is like put on your armor. Like Athena has to have armor because she has to fight and battle, when that's not necessarily the way that the feminine fights. Not that it doesn't have a shield or like it can't kill someone. Like obviously snakes strike people, like an owl can swoop in and bite. But to me, these symbols are just a little more indicative of the Olympian her. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Though I would also say that particularly, well, yeah, the spear or the arrow, there's this sense of like getting to the heart of the matter, this precision, this like being able to cut through to like what's real. And I think that is a part of Athena, part of Pallas that is still incredibly relevant for this conversation that we're having about the feminine. That ability, because especially in astrology, where she is in your chart can give this indicator of like, where do you see patterns that other people don't? Where do you notice? Where do you cut through to the core of things? And other people are like, what? Where that? Huh? What's that? Because they're completely clueless. But you had the foresight and the capacity to observe, as well as the capacity to cut through to what's real. And that symbolism, like, I love that symbolism.
I was thinking about this as you're talking. I was thinking about, we talked about Mulan last time. Like that's very Pallas Athena story. And then if anyone's ever seen Vikings, Igertha is incredible story of exactly this thing. Like she's protective. She fights, like her life depends on it, but she fights for her family, she fights for her home, she protects her country. She's a very big proponent of protecting, and even to the point of going off and doing other things that don't look like, they're not as like clear cut, but it's a total strategy that comes full circle. So that's a really good one for that. But it's all about like protecting the home when it comes to that shield, when it comes to the spear.
Yeah, like it's not about fighting just for fighting's sake.
It's not conquest. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Thanks for pointing that out. And then olive trees, I think this is like such a lovely symbol. But trees in general are, of course, associated with the feminine. We've talked about this multiple times. There's so many reasons trees are so feminine and so wise. You know, they're one of the things that live the longest on the earth and pick up the most wisdom. And they have learned, like trees have learned to be everywhere in every country, in every place. Trees have learned to thrive over time. They have networks underground. But I really love this for her, as far as like this fruit bearing tree, this olive tree is often associated like when the olive runs. So, like when you make olive oil and do it the old fashioned way with the rocks, the olives run red juice. So it looks like blood. And I actually love that as a feminine symbol, because what do women do every month to make sure everyone else lives? They bleed. We bleed. And we also bear fruit. And so I love that for her, that even though she does have, in one of the myths, she has like a child, but she doesn't like have children in the same way that the other goddesses have children. It's not as conventional for her. But I love that as the woman who is strategic and helping these heroes, that's her gift. She bears her fruit. She has that wisdom that she gives, and that she weaves things together again with that networking. So anything else you guys want to say about the olive tree?
I just think it is this beautiful, like, hearkening back to her origins, because her earliest origins that we're aware of, she was connected to fertility, which is like, people have a hard time wrapping their heads around the idea of like, oh, how could a virginal goddess, because she was considered one of the virginal goddesses, how could she be connected to fertility? And like, I mean, we could get into the construct of virginity if we wanted to, but maybe not this time. And the fact that like it's very manufactured in a lot of ways, but also sexual energy does not always equal sex. It's a creative energy. Any creation energy is the same as sexual energy, as long as it's not been tampered with, I guess you could say. And so for her, she began connected to fertility. She morphed into this like virginal goddess. And at first it seems like, oh, she's completely cut off from that fertility connection. But only if you look at virginity through this very narrow lens, this construct. And so that symbol of the olive tree, it's like this reminder of like, oh yeah, there's fertility, and it doesn't have to mean sex, and it can mean sex.
Fertile with ideas too, right? Like fertile with concepts, ideas, like bringing forth that fruit. Yeah, I really love that.
What's the pure meaning of Pallas in a chart? Like, regardless of sign, regardless of house, whatever, regardless of aspect, what is it?
Well, there's definitely this creative problem solving aspect to Pallas. There's also this aspect of, like I mentioned before, that's an area where you're more likely to like either hide or try to protect feminine energy, or somehow reject feminine energy and lean too much into masculine energy. But it's also an area where you are more likely to feel called to reclaim your feminine energy. So it's like two sides of the same coin right there. And there's this wisdom component and this willingness to fight, but to do it in a wise way component with her placement in your chart. Julie and Jan, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, all I would say is yes, it's often to reverberate what Kaylee said earlier. This is where you find patterns other people don't. Like you can see patterns other people can't. This is where you have inner wisdom. This is can be kind of your strategy in many different ways as you go throughout life. And it can be a place where you also have gifts in like crafting, how you craft that, how you come and approach things like the arts because of that connection with Pallas Athena to the arts. And it's your creative intelligence, it's your wisdom. Sometimes it's even your diplomacy intact because Pallas was so good at that, it being strategic in those ways as well. And it can also be kind of where you are helping to write things, like she helps heroes. You help other people to navigate. This place can help you help other people to navigate these things, and a place where you have some courage, your creative learning and your strategy for things.
Okay, so let's talk about the Pallas in the elements and what does it mean to have Pallas in each element, because it's going to be fairly similar, just like slightly different flavors of that same element. As you think about like, okay, I have Sagittarian Pallas, but there's a lot of similarities with Aries and all that. Fun fact that no one knew what I was going to say here, but this is relevant. We can see the colors that we name. Okay, when we name colors, and they studied. I just watched a video on this when they study different cultures across the world. They can see more nuance in certain colors that they had more specific names for. So as we're going through this, and like blue, it started with blue. Like Greek mythology didn't have ancient Greek. They didn't name blue. They didn't see that. Yeah. So as we're going through all of this, it's also important to recognize the more nuance that you can name, the more nuance you will start to see. So just sit with that. Let's talk about Pallas in a fire element.
Love it.
Sign.
Pallas and fire. So thinking about fiery qualities, leadership, right? That's a fiery quality. And so your strategy might be to take initiative, to lead out. That might be part of that. You might have gifts of shining, performing, gifts of teaching. Your strategy might be to teach other people, to light other people up. I also like to mention with fire and air particularly, part of the strategy may be to make fun, like to poke fun or to be funny, because fire signs think they are funny a lot of the time.
You mean sarcasm is emotional connection is a fire quality?
Often, especially I feel like the second decan of Aries is particularly like this. Anyway, We'll talk about that later. But yeah, I would say those are some of the ones that come up as far as like strategic stuff, that if you have Pallas in a fire sign, your strategy might be like shining, teaching. You may have this like initiation piece or this leadership piece that like it's your job to lead out. And in some of the fire signs, it may be like the strategy could be like I go it alone, or like I pioneer it by myself. That might be part of it. Whereas other fire signs are more prone to like, my strategy is to teach everybody else so they can get on the same page as me, pieces like that. And, or like, I'm here to like perform this for other people, like to sparkle it for them so that they can understand it better as far as the strategy. But there are other pieces of Pallas. So I would love to hear both of your thoughts on it.
Yeah, what's coming to mind for me is just this idea that if you have Pallas in a fire sign, it's very possible that you would see patterns that other people can't as it relates to motivation and drive, your motivation, maybe other people's motivations. It might depend on the house, but like have this gift for motivating other people, potentially seeing the why behind what people do, and potentially having an ability to see patterns when it comes to the physical body and energy levels. And that could be as simple as just knowing, hey, when I do X, Y, and Z, I always feel this way, and being very keyed into your own body potentially. But like not the some of the fire signs aren't as keyed into the body as others, but all of them have this very strong connection to like life force. And so there is going to be this element of like, okay, am I being wise in how I use my life force and how I use my energy and how I take action? That somebody with Pallas in a fire sign, they're going to have more of that than somebody else.
So I think about it as like the when you're faced with a problem and you have to come up against some kind of out of the box solution or creativity, like what's your default setting, right? And so fire signs default setting to an out of the box solution is to just, how can I best make headway? How can I best show up? And let's start by showing up and see what happens. And they're going to be a lot more, it's an interesting ride. You know what I mean?
Yeah, quickness kind of comes to mind. Like, I mean, Leo sometimes is not as quick as the others, but like this quickness to action. Let's go. Let's get it started. Let's initiate this. Let's drive it forward. Like, let's fire it that way. I also was thinking about this in terms of where do we see this as far as the heroine's journey and like our entrance point into that? And with fire, I mean, we see this with fire signs all the time, right? And with fire, it may be like feeling like you have to be driven 24/7. Like you have to be the leader. You have to prove that you can be a leader. You have to prove that you can do it on your own. Those are all themes where like you might be leaning too much into the masculine, and then all of a sudden you get too burnt out to do that. And so reclaiming action and drive and life force in a way that's more feminine might be the way to rebalance that.
Stepping into strategy over burnout. Very nice. Let's go to Earth. What are some Earth flavors of Pallas Athena? Which it's a very earthy experience to begin with. We talked about Pallas and Athena's connection to the Earth. So what does it feel like to have Pallas in an Earth sign?
There's definitely going to be a practicality and like an application to like the real world. Like let's see patterns in our physical environment. Let's see patterns in the structures around us. Let's have a strategy that possibly involves material things, but definitely has a pragmaticism, a like this actually works in real life rather than this is just off in my head. Though Pallas is always connected to like, hey, what works in real life, but I think Pallas in an earth sign is going to be even more so, just like, okay, does this make sense? Is this actually workable? And that there's going to be a gift for things related to the actual physical, tangible world rather than just ideas.
Yeah, the queen of common sense, right? Like I am the queen of common sense, but also that moldability. I think the ability to mold things or to shape things, to structure things, the strategy may be to structure things that come through to you. How do we structure that? For some people, that will be like, we need to throw everything into a spreadsheet and structure it that way, right? Like bringing that structure. For other people, that will be, we need to build an actual fence or wall, or like we need to actually make and create a garden. And that is like how we will sustain ourselves. And it could be also through art or like making beautiful things because of this. And it could be actual things like weaving and molding and things like that. Is like your strategy is to put your problems or whatever through your ability to create and shape. So, and as far as I'll let you go, Jan. You can say the things.
I was not ready for that. Oh, I was just thinking, like, okay, this is making sense. This is making some sense, right? Being able to strategize in an earth way. Yeah, I was just looking back on my life going, oh, there's my earth. I don't have a lot of earth in my chart. There it is. Earthy stuff in the earthy place. So good. I think you guys said it. I was like really grateful you said the word spreadsheets. That was perfect. It was beautiful. And I imagine someone with Earth-based Pallas Athena placements is going to be annoyed that the world is not as strategic as it could be, or that, other people aren't doing the same things. Let's talk about Pallas Athena in air.
Real quick, I just want to touch on the possibilities of Pallas Athena as an earth sign as far as like the connection to entering the heroine's journey and where you might find yourself over masculizing. This one's pretty easy, right? Like seeing yourself as like, I am the most common sense, leaning so much into structure and practicality that you forget your creative intuition, or you can't lean on that, or I must have a job that is in finance or in science or is in numbers. Like I have to be, and not that that's bad. You can be that. You can be that and be feminine. Like you can be an engineer, but letting that take over so much that like we're playing the game again where I have to be better than all the boys. Like I have to be better than a man at doing this. And this is the only way, like not opening up your life to wisdom and intuition so much. You're so stubborn, right? Like getting into that like stubborn ability of earth to be like, no, this is the only way it can be, rather than, and like trusting too much in the physical, right? Like in the physical realm, I would say is probably like the more masculized version. And to rectify that, right, coming back to the artistry of this, the connection with nature, coming back a little bit more to, yes, you can have common sense and practicality and still do the feminine thing. Any thoughts on that from the two of you?
I was just thinking about how like there can be this overemphasis on a physical appearance that can come in as well, with like over masculinizing or trying to like push too hard into pleasing the masculine for specifically earth signs. And that kind of the rectification of that would be to like actually be in your body and connect to your senses instead of just focusing on how you appear to other people.
That is very interesting. Very interesting. All right, so let's go ahead and move to water. Oh, I'm sorry, I said air. I said air. We haven't even gotten to water. I think I lost my brain cells. Let's go move on to air, and let's find out what it means to have Pallas in an air sign.
Love that. Yes, Pallas in an air sign, likely quick with words, right? Speaking, using your ability to speak and reason and think to be able to, as your strategy to make things work. Also, like maybe weaving words, right? Like being a word weaver, a wordsmith in those ways could be a very air thing, following the logic and the way that you think about things, and sometimes maybe cutting off, well, knowledge being very important to you, like wanting to have all the pieces and like having all the important information to make decisions could be part of this, but also maybe cutting off your thoughts from your feelings in order to make the correct decision. Like my head is the smartest one, right? Like I need to listen to my head and I need to do things with my head rather than doing them with my heart. And that's my strategy, is like I do things with my head, with words, with the knowledge I've gained, right? And part of the strategy might be looking for knowledge all the time, trying to find more and more of that.
Yeah, and there can definitely be this almost like social acumen, like having Pallas in an air sign. There's this being able to see and recognize patterns in social interactions and social constructs and like the ideas that underlie all of those. Somebody with that placement is going to most likely have greater social acumen than, say, someone like me. And they're going to potentially have a lot of charisma as well.
I love it. What about the entry point into the heroine's journey for an air sign, Pallas Athena?
Yeah. And also, I just wanted to mention diplomacy also, right? We mentioned about diplomacy as an air thing. Entry point, I talked about it a little bit, right, is going to be I've cut off all my feeling. Like I don't feel anything. I only think with my head. I'm in my head all the time. I've cut myself off from my body. I can't deal with my body. I can only deal with my head, which may result in, I wouldn't be surprised if, this happens to many people anyway, regardless of where your Pallas is. I would not be surprised if people with Pallas in an air sign have significant health issues come up, and that's what pushes them into the heroine's journey, because they're always in their head and not in their heart, or just like overthinking so much, right, that you can't be in touch with that more feminine way of thinking, strategizing, and balancing the head and the heart.
Anxiety can be an issue as well. That for that particular placement of Pallas can be this real motivator to like, okay, something's got to change before I just completely fall apart mentally.
And internally, I feel like there's a thought process of a numbers Ponzi scheme, right? And there ends up being like a question of like, why are we even doing this? What is the purpose, right? Like whenever you think of the dark side of any network marketing company, right? You're just making more numbers to make more numbers, right? And so bringing in, and it's funny because Pallas is typically more grounded, but bringing in that actual groundedness of like, what's the true value? And that's kind of the journey I think that air signs go on.
Well, I was going to say just being careful not to as far as the social piece, and this might be mostly Libra as well, but like not overextending yourself so much to please like the masculine in whatever way that looks like, whether that's like cutting off your femininity completely, to please the masculine, or whether that's like over feminizing and similar to an earth, maybe using your social skills or your beauty or your body to do that, and then needing to come back to balance.
So good. So good. Okay. I keep trying to bring this up and it's the wrong time every time, but now it's the right time. We can finally talk about water. What's wrong with me? Whatever. It's a day. It's a good day. What does it mean to have Pallas in a water sign? What are the high sides? What are the low sides?
So where my mind immediately went when you brought up water and Pallas is just this idea of like being able to connect with, it might be a little hard for Pallas sometimes because Pallas does tend to be so grounded, but connecting with like the more ethereal, the beyond, the things that are not yet tangible, having a real solid understanding of emotions and how they work, and being able to maybe make that connection between intention and actual manifestation more easily than the average person because of that strategizing element, that creative problem solving element of like, okay, let's take this thing that's out there energetically and let's actually bring it into this solid form. That is a very Pallas and water strength.
Yeah, that intuition, like being able to follow your intuition. Also, like caring and home and family can be like nurturing something, can be your strategy, like strategically nurturing things, or like using your emotions and following those, or empathy. That could be a strategy. Going towards comfort, that's more Cancer-y, but like going towards like what is flowing and comfortable for you. And it could even be with water, like what's the path of least resistance could be a strategy. Like, what's the flow? And just like letting go and letting the flow take you could be that. On the side of like the difficult things, right? It might be, I mean, cutting yourself off from emotion is kind of what I thought was the first thought that I had was,
Or weaponizing emotion
yes,
is another.
weaponizing it, manipulation through emotion, manipulation through home and family, or not even home and family, but even like, say if it were Pisces, through like the connection between all people, or through this artistic channels, or you know, something like Scorpio is more like, I mean, Scorpio is more famous for the manipulation piece, but like through someone's not knowing, or through privacy. So yeah, that's what that, you know, and maybe it's hard to like be, I don't know. What do you think, Jan? Like, masculine water is a little tougher.
So it can be a point where you can psychically know what people's pain points are and accidentally push their buttons if you're not aware. Because not because it's a conscious strategy, but because it is a strategy to get what you want. It is a strategy to feel safe. Because when we're dealing with water, we're dealing with the unconscious, subconscious, and we're dealing with emotions. And so you can be very accidentally emotionally manipulative, and you have to bring consciousness to it and go, oof, that was, how did I know that? That was extra mean, like psychically mean, tailored to that person's deepest wounds. And I could see them and I could say it, and I didn't realize I was doing that. Yeah, and it's to me that entry point is when you start to go, I am not a very nice person, and I think I'm nice, and I'm like deeply empathetic, but I am not being very nice. And how do I find out how to come off as nice, even though I think that I'm being really nice, that I think I'm being really poignant, that I think I'm, how do I have that depth perception on what's too much and where can I be a little more reserved or wise in my decision making on how to use these collective subconscious, unconscious realms on purpose.
Yeah, I was also thinking about like spiritual manipulation of people,
Yeah.
which goes along with that, right? This spiritual, like, oh, you have to do it because I had this revelation that you would, or you should, or like this particular structure, or like you can't do that because like it's wrong spiritually or religiously, or you know, taking that to bat, I think can be one of it. And I also was thinking, kind of like with the others, like when we talked about earth and air, I was thinking about like over, like feminizing yourself in the way that is not good for you. So like, but like again, trying to like please that masculine piece by being like the best homemaker, like the most accommodating, like the most emotionally stimulating. I don't know, you know, like helping
The
people.
best martyr ever.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Top
The
tier
best
martyrdom
martyr.
right here. Yes.
Yes, yes. Talking to the
Yeah.
martyrdom. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's like so much I could say about water, surprisingly. So much I could say about water and strategy. Yeah. I was like, maybe this isn't a whole episode on Piscean martyrdom or whatever. So those are the elements. I talked a lot about the entry point, but did you guys have anything else to say about the entry point of how you can, where it might take you on the heroine's journey?
What came to mind for me is this like spiritual bypassing, that you can go to this place of labeling these emotions are bad, these things are bad, like these things are not okay. I have to show up in this way exactly spiritually to be the best person. I have to show up this way emotionally to be the best. That's this point of like, oh, wow, I have cut off the feminine and I have Pallas in a water sign. And then coming back to that would be like, okay, can you hold space for all of your emotions, even the ones that you've labeled as bad? Can you hold space for your spirituality to look different than the conscripted way that you are forcing it to look? Because you can get surprisingly burnt out doing the spiritual bypassing thing.
I completely agree with that. I keep thinking about Scorpio because there's always like one sign that like it's like one of these things is not like the other. Like it's just a little different. When it comes to Scorpio, I keep thinking about like intentionally hiding things and hiding things from yourself, and that being an entry point, like hiding your femininity, hiding those, keeping it everything locked down and like only allowing yourself to have like that ruthless part open instead of like allowing yourself to open up and feel everything like Kaylee was saying too.
I think punishment comes in a lot for or not Pisces. Well, maybe for Pisces too, but for Scorpio, this punishment piece. First, maybe punishing other people, and then punishing yourself, and then realizing, wait, this is not working. Like this is not a good use of my power. What do I do now?
Yeah, I'm gonna go on this rant here that I've done in other places, including my email. But is this really important? Because when you get into like New Age spirituality or whatever, you oftentimes come across the hierarchy of emotions and their frequency. And David R. Hawkins is the one who kind of famously did that first, I think. And I want to say this, it is not incorrect, right? It's technically correct. What the problem is people use it wrong, 100% use it wrong. They use it as a way to avoid the lower, quote, lower frequency emotions and not experience them, when the best way to get out of the whatever the lower vibration is to experience the emotion, allow it to release. The real problem is that we have all of these like little secret shames that we're not dealing with that are just living in our existence. And we have this hierarchy of, oh, well, I don't need to feel shame. I shouldn't feel shame. And so we're literally spiritually bypassing those. So what you have to do is go down and then come back up. That is the normal way. Hello, heroine's journey. Hello, shadow work. Like, this is not about shaming the existence of shame. It's about, okay, I don't want this shame to live in my body anymore. And so I'm going to go and find it, and experience it, and love it, and let go of it. So yes, things can be technically correct, but that's not necessarily like prescriptive on how to use that tool. Anyways, that's my soapbox. This is not related to Pallas, but it is related to Pallas.
Well, it is. Yeah. And this is something I will 100% talk about all the day long. But that's like old spirituality, right? Like old spirituality is never feel it, push it down. You can only feel the good things, just like get over
Don't
all the
be
things.
human. Don't be
Yes.
human.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, wait a minute. No, like we're here to have a human experience, but like I don't even know how to word it. It's just this idea of like, okay, we've got to cut off all the lower vibration things. We've got to cut off the quote unquote bad emotions. We've got to cut off our bodies because that's a lower vibration too than spirit. Like we've got to cut off all these things that it's like, wait a minute. No, these are the foundations for everything else. They actually are the foundations for everything else. And it doesn't mean that they're bad or that we outgrow them. It means we get to learn how to incorporate them with other things. And so this idea, I mean, it brings me back to like the idea of like bridle your passions. Well, that doesn't mean shoot the horse dead. That means give the horse some parameters to work within and channel its intensity and channel its power into something that you want it to do and be, not like leave it rotting on the side of the road. And then walk where you're going. Anyway, obviously we can all get pretty fired up about this.
Clearly.
Yes, I was going to say, and you know who never gets blamed for this, but is a huge part of why this happens, which no one expects me to say right now. It's Plato. It's Plato's fault.
What? So confused. Go ahead. Please elaborate.
See, you didn't expect me to say that.
I wasn't. I've never heard you get on this.
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry. Hold. I heard Play-Doh. And I was like,
Plato.
Why is all of this Play-Doh's fault? What clay are we mushing wrong? Tell me and why.
It's fantastic.
Tell us about Plato.
Plato,
Yes,
who in my mind, because of some random TV show I don't even know the name of, is a bull. I don't know why, but Plato was a bull. And he was
very
not.
Good to know. Very, very good to know. It is. It's a lot of, it's a lot of people's faults. Part of it is like the Catholic Church's fault, and like but they always get the blame. Like they get blamed a lot. So let's blame Plato a little more because he helped a lot. Like this is big time his fault also. So listen, Plato's like one of the first guys who's like, the body is terrible and we must only love our spirit, and we to get out of like to have this. He's like one of the first people who in modern terms said the body is low vibration, the spirit is high vibration, and we must go to the spirit, and the body is evil and we must leave it behind. Like he's a big, like, I know we're always like, well, the Catholic Church is part of that too and all these things. Yes, and where that he's like where they got it, because when they merged together all those philosophies got brought over. Not that they didn't have like their own issues as well that they brought to the plate, but he's one of the first people who's like, the body is evil and you can only have your spirit. And he's one of the first people who's like, lower emotions are the things that make that. Like anger is what makes you stay in your body. So you must have better things. So anyway, there you go. That's my whole spiel about Plato and Platonism separating us from our bodies. And he needs a little more blame. So there you go.
I didn't know that. I actually don't think I've ever read Plato, other than random people put up on social media and attribute to him, but I don't know if that's true.
And would you agree, Julie, that he is like, in a lot of ways, the root of like why the solution is to just cut it off and deny? Like why denial? Deny the body, deny the needs of your body, deny the anger, because somehow denying its existence is going to make it go away. No.
But yogis still teach this,
I
like
know.
Michael Singer and like lots of big and Michael Singer has lots of good stuff too. He's the one who wrote The Surrender Experiment and like The Unbridled Spirit or something like that. He's kind of huge in this space for people who don't know who he is. But like, and he has some good stuff also. But like a lot of this, like yogis are still teaching, right? Like you need to like tamp down your emotion, cut yourself off from your body, and like only feel the higher vibration. And the solution is always this very masculine solution of like, just deal with it. Like just cut it off, let it go. Like just don't like push it down. So
Yeah.
anyway, sorry, this is a huge tangent.
There's this philosophy of transcendence though, and that in the yoga community, as far as I have observed, there's starting to be a little bit more of this like, okay, let's come back into the body. Let's like there are people developing somatic yoga, which you think would be like redundant, like somatic is the body, yoga is the body. But no. Like yoga is so much more than the body. And like to make somatic yoga that brings you back into your body, is kind of revolutionary in some ways for a lot of the philosophy that's been out there in the yoga community for a long time. And so there's this idea of like, oh, we used to want to travel up our chakras and get to the top and stay there. But now we're realizing, oh, wait, like we also need to come back down through the chakras. And maybe we don't need to stay in any one place. Maybe that's all just supposed to flow.
Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes. That's why this podcast exists. Perhaps Athena's relationship to the heroine's journey brought us down our own heroine's journey within the podcast. That's what all these tangents are for, because we're actually exploring and like taking things apart that we weren't really planning on talking about, but we went there, and this is like super important stuff, man. Like crazy important.
Amen, Jan. Amen.
You're
Here
welcome.
we are.
I'm always right.
You are. That's right.
Being a Gemini, I can be always right because I can see every aspect. So whichever one is right is the one I said, because I said it all.
I love it. We applaud you all, everyone listening to the podcast applauds
Oh my
you.
God.
Right this minute, right now, for being right always.
I don't need all that. Sit down, Julie. You're cracking me up. Oh my gosh. And I applaud thee too. Thee and thou also. I don't know. I'm not a linguist. But all of you, yes, this is such a good episode. So fun. We're having so much fun. I love it. What else do we need to know about Pallas Athena that we haven't said? Or anything else that we need to be saying right now?
Okay, I always have random facts.
Yes.
Random
Do
thing,
it.
but also not so random. So the actual asteroid, not Athena, Pallas. The actual asteroid Pallas is very interesting because it has like this really, I guess you could say, intense orbit. It orbits in a way that makes it so when it gets impacted by other things, like when it gets hit by smaller asteroids or things like that they hit extra hard. So Pallas is way more pockmarked, you could say, has a much more violent history and past than the other asteroid goddesses that inhabit basically the same space. And this is super fascinating to me, given that Pallas, well, Athena, like she was considered the goddess of war. So there's some like violence going on there, but also the violence that's been done to the entirety of humanity, not just women, but also men. And anybody who identifies as anything in between, the violence that's been done against us by trying to cut off half of our energy, half of our experience, just like shoving that feminine away. And people sometimes try to do the opposite violence and just cut the masculine completely out of everything and cut men completely out of everything and say that they're the problem and they're the worst. And like the feminine is great and amazing. And it's like, wait, no, like we can't take that route. Like I know that we don't want to take that route as a podcast, as individuals, but I think as a world, as a community, as human beings, as whatever you want to call us, like we cannot take the route of doing the same violence to the masculine and to men that was done to the feminine and to women. And because everybody loses, demonizing the feminine also hurt men, and demonizing the masculine is hurting women. Like it doesn't just go one way or the other. And so there's got to be this middle ground. And I think Pallas is potentially this point that can teach us this middle ground of blending the masculine and the feminine and having that experience in a more balanced and healthy way so that we're all part of the equation and none of us are considered less than. Anyway, there's my soapbox for the episode.
Loving it. Oh my gosh, I have so many chills right now. The way you brought that from asteroid pockmarks to the wounded feminine and then the wounded man, like, I'm done. Can't.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, and I think you can see that she's between Mars and Jupiter, which is very like perfect for her in that. Like yes, they're both masculine, but going from this warlike nature to this generosity nature and being that in between and just coming together, I think is perfect for Pallas Athena. So, I think there's many more things we could say about her, but I think Kaylee about wrapped it up.
I think so. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. Oh my gosh, this is probably one of the most poignant, rich, and fun episodes I think that we've done ever. So great. So great. And thank you everybody for listening. And we're looking forward to seeing you again next week when we're going to talk about another asteroid goddess. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Please make sure to give us a 5-star rating wherever you are listening and share with someone you know. See you next week.